Can you see or is it we need to get the light?
Yes.
How is that? Right, so this is a good representation of the gross anatomy. You have a pair of kidneys, two ureters, a bladder, where the urine goes, this big yellow big thing here, and then you would have a urethra, which is this little piece coming off. So again, not much to in terms of gross anatomy, but in terms of physiology, it's a pretty complex system, probably in my mind next to nervous. So for our purposes, for lab purposes, you need to know, recognize the kidney. We do talk about the adrenal gland, not because it's part of the urinary system, but because it's right there, it sits on top of the kidneys, and it is complementary for our blood pressure. I think you know that. Lots of aldosterone, for example, is produced there, epinephrine, and so on. So usually we do it while we're talking about, just like we do the spleen when we do digestive. Even though the spleen, what did I do now? Even though the spleen is not a digestive structure, we normally do it when we do digestion. So we do the same thing with adrenal. Other things I wanted to note is the blood vessels, especially the renal artery and vein, because that's key to how the system operates. The urinary system, let's quickly review some of its functions. Anybody want to tell me what they think primary function might be? Regulate blood pressure, very good. We've gone through those. Anything else? Filtration. Filtration is one of the mechanisms for accomplishing what? What's a big overarching function that filtration is going to serve?
Excretion. Excretion.
Getting rid of waste.
Excretion.
Yes. In order to process clean the blood of the waste and process it, filtration is going to be one of the process. Reabsorption and secretion is the other big two. So we have, so far we have blood pressure regulation. We have waste removal, and I should say metabolic waste, because as you know, again, from the beginning of the semester, the the respiratory system removes your excessive CO2. That's another waste product that can affect your electrolytes. And speaking of, it's a big part of electrolyte balance. Or another way of saying acid-base balance. Or regulate your pH, whichever you prefer. Any other one? Electrolyte balance, or acid-base balance, or pH balance, pH regulation. All of that fall under this category here. And that is to say, again, the respiratory gets rid of our CO2, which, as you know, will form carbonic acid when it dissolves in water. Well, all the other metabolic waste, especially nitrogenous waste, you don't breathe that out. That comes out through the kidney. And those can change your pH of your blood and body fluids as well. So it's a big deal. In fact, if you look in the textbook, you'll see a whole chapter on electrolyte and fluid balance. And fluid balance is the other one I was hoping you would say. So the urinary system is responsible for regulating your fluids. And you can tell that it works very hard to do so, because if you drink a lot of water, you are going to live in the bathroom. And the reason for that is your cells need a precise amount of water. Of course, they're submerged in fluid, but you certainly don't want them floating in hypotonic fluid, right? And when you drink a lot of water, that's precisely what you will have. And so it is the job of the kidney to make sure that the cells don't find themselves in this very dilute solution. Or, for that matter, if you're like me and don't drink enough water, don't find themselves in a very, a concentrated solution. So, for example, if you don't drink a lot of water, you notice you don't go to the bathroom often. That's because the body is holding on, the urinary system on to what little water you have. And that will help to prevent excessive dehydration. And that if you're very dehydrated, then the cells are going to be in hypertonic solution, right? And we already know what hypotonic does and what hypertonic does to the cells, yes? What does the hypo do? Swells and ruptures or lysis. And the hyper shrinks them. So the prenation is just the invagination. Shrinking is what really happens. Invagination of the membrane is called prenation. So yes, those are the things that the urinary system is going to try to avoid. And by fine-tuning it, so water in, water out, fluid in, fluid out. Your intake must equal your usage, otherwise any excess on your way out. So very important process. Some other ones, another one you've been through before. Remember erythropoietin? What was it again? Hormone that produces red blood cells. Red blood cells, yes? And it's not, so I'm going to put hormone production. It's not the only hormone that's produced. Anyone remember, anybody remember another one that you've been through? Not also, that the kidney.
Well, no, I know that's produced it, but can't do things that affect it.
Calcitrol is a hormone that is produced. That's another one of the functions I'm going to talk about. No, ADH is in the hypothalamus. How about renin? So hormones like renin, erythropoietin, I put this by itself even though it's a hormone because it is play a big role. If you go back to 2017, play a big old role in what? Where did we see citrol? Dr. Citrol. What was its action? What was it doing? Why is it important? Okay, somebody help her. She's on the way.
Yes.
Was it releasing so that the ADP it attached so that it could be released, like muscle contraction?
Oh, no, the other one. Bone.
Bone.
Calcium regulation. Remember. And there's one that most people don't think about, and that is glucogenesis. And what does that word mean? Production of sugar. Makes glucose. Well, it turns out that that's not something you typically associate with the kidney. You would think the liver would be processing your glucose, right? But under certain conditions, the kidney will produce glucose. Those conditions usually are starvation. So if you're starving and the body thinks you need some glucose, the kidney will jump in to help. Other situations that mimic starvation, for example, anorexia. If you're anorexic, then your kidney is going to make glucose because it thinks you don't have enough food somewhere and it's helping out. And then surprisingly, diabetes. If you have diabetes, because you're not processing your glucose very well, and the body thinks you're not getting the glucose even though you have it sitting in the blood, then the kidney will jump in to help by producing glucose. So there are times when it can actually produce glucose. So you can see there's a long list there, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple, but you get the idea. It's a very important system, and it touches the other systems. That's the other thing about the urinary system. It's its connection to the other system. So when it starts failing, the other system go down line quickly too. So back to our little diagram here. The kidney is where the process processing and the sorting takes place. It's where the machinery is. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to dissect it. In fact, you're going to get a real kidney as well as the fake ones. And we are going to look at what's in it. The tubes that's coming out, well, the blood vessels, the blue one goes in, the blue one comes out, the red one goes in. No surprises there. What's surprising is that we know that arteries deliver to an organ, right? We know that. And veins drain the organ. So there's nothing different about that arrangement. What's interesting is that delivery, it's red, right? So you expect it to be oxygenated and you expect it to be the best blood, right? But that's where all that waste that the kidney is going to process is in that red blood going in. So the veins, when it's coming out with the cleaned blood. So the kidney has this very unusual circulatory system. We call it a renal portal system. Remember we had one with digestive? Well, we see a special one here with the kidney as well. We will talk more about that in lecture. But if you're wondering, how come you're cleaning the blood that's going in the kidney but it's red? That's because there's a special system going on, a special portal system. So, and again, don't mix up the idea that the blue one is going to come back from the kidney with the metabolic waste cleaned from it, but it's going to pick up the CO2 because the kidney doesn't clean CO2, right? So any CO2 that the kidney cells have will be picked up and will be taken to the lung and gotten rid of. But the blood coming back generally is clean. Just because it has CO2 in it doesn't mean it's dirty or it's a bad blood or anything. People tend to associate CO2 with bad, or blue blood, blue with bad, and red with good. So you need to rethink that a bit, especially when it comes to what the kidney does. All right, so we're going to go now and we're going to go a little deeper. And for that, this is the one I'm looking for. Can you see that from where you are? So we are going to cut into the kidney, and I also have a dissected kidney as well. It's not very nice.
Mine is exactly the same as this.